Hi, I'm Mario, and today I'm up on the roof of my Geo Pro travel trailer. Got a water infiltration issue associated with these solar panels, and so today that's what I'm going to address. So it's been raining, and I haven't had a chance to have a good enough gap in the weather and the proper tools to get up here, so on and so forth. So today I'm going to try to tackle this. Essentially what happened was one night, in the middle of the night, I heard an alarm coming from my solar charge controller, and it was just kind of a steady beep, and it gave an error code that there was some sort of polarity issue with the battery. And so what it turns out to be is, after taking it apart, and let me say this, I thought I initially found the problem because when I took the charge controller out from the wall, there was some rattling inside, and I figured what was happening was that something shorted out. So there was debris inside the charge controller, like construction debris type stuff. So at any rate, I was very pleased to find it because I thought I found the problem. But ultimately, I cleaned out the inside of the charge controller, buttoned it all back up, and the alarm went off again. And what I ultimately found out was that water was weeping down one of the cables, I believe with a negative cable. So there are two cables coming out from the solar panel. They penetrate the roof and then go down and connect to the solar charge controller. So now I have to figure out, here I have I forget what they call this little penetration point here. So at any rate, this is the connector. It's Go Power is the manufacturer. Go Power supplies a lot of the manufacturers, the RV manufacturers, marine, that sort of stuff. So at any rate, what I need to do is I need to investigate where the water is infiltrating. And I'm going to go ahead and start by taking this apart. So there is some lap sealant here around the module here, and it looks like 4 screws. Not sure what type of screw heads are there. I did notice over here on this end right here there is some cracking, so there could be water getting in there. So yeah, I don't really know what's going on, but I do have my Dicor sealant. I have my caulking gun. When I purchased this caulking gun, I opted for one that wasn't the cheapest one there. Just from experience, I want to have good control over dispensing the lap sealant, and so that's why I went with this one. This one has a description here. It's a heavy-duty caulk gun, but yeah, that's the handle is more robust, and the plunger, same thing. Anyway, so I got these 2 items. I have some water here to drink. I have some water here to try to clean up with my soap. I got a 100% cotton t-shirt that I can use to help clean up. I also have some denatured alcohol. So the reason for the denatured alcohol is that while I'm up on the roof, I'm going to go ahead and try to repair some of the existing lap sealant. I can see there's some issues on some of these, like around my Wi-Fi Ranger, around the Max Air vent hood, there seems to be some issues. So I'll have to use the denatured alcohol, clean up with soap and water, denatured alcohol, and then apply lap sealant on top of the existing lap sealant. In the case of this whole thing has to come off this solar panel connector here. Okay, so the very first thing that I need to do is I got some electricity going through these cables here, so I want to disconnect these from the solar panel. So my solar panel over here, I believe, has these MC4 connectors, and so the first thing I want to do is disconnect these. So I'll should be able to squeeze these together and take them apart, and they should be wired in a way that you can't change the polarity when you connect them back. They only go one direction. I want to see what sort of fastener I have here. Maybe what I can do is just start by peeling back some of this Dicor. I immediately realized I forgot paper towels and gloves. Yeah, and I can see this, whatever this fastener is loose, and it looks like an Allen head. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is try to back out that fastener. I brought up some nitrile gloves. I got a trash bag here. Looks like I'm going to be making a mess. Essentially what's going on is I have just basically started lifting out this screw, whatever type screw head. I was worried it might be a rivet, but at any rate, looks like a masonry screw. I don't know, it's stripped. At any rate, there's one of apparently 4 fasteners, but I'm going to go ahead and try to disconnect these MC4s here and see if I can get this thing cleaned up. So just to get these wires out of the way. Maybe I can twist this sucker off here. All right, that wasn't too bad. So it's just a wood screw here. And just pulled right out. And I can't tell what size that is. Looks like an Allen head. Maybe this might be a square head screw. So I don't know if it's the best idea in the world, but I'm going to try to remove all or as much as I can of the existing lap sealant. And I'm just kind of rolling this back here away from what seems like, I don't know, one of the rubber roofs. So the roof looks like it's rubber, and they just kind of set the roof on top. It's not necessarily fully laminated. As I'm rolling it back, I'm looking for water infiltration, so I don't see any evidence at their circumference, at the edges. But I am worried about this little spot right here, because there is a little crack right there. So I'm curious about that. And I do actually have a putty knife here. So what I'm curious about is if water is getting in here in that little spot right there. And it looks like it did. I can see some dirt underneath the bracket where the Dicor did not mate to the bracket. So let's see here. I'll kind of start peeling this up a little bit here. Once I get those fasteners backed out, I should be able to lift this off. And what I might do is I might use adhesive to mount the bracket back down. So as I'm doing this, I'm realizing I should have cleaned the surface before starting work, because I'm not going to be able to get all of this lap sealant off, right? So I should have cleaned as good as I could have and then started the removal process. So as it turns out, I was able to back out the screws using a Phillips screwdriver. I was just about getting ready to head to the store to grab a square head, but some of those square heads actually are square heads, but can kind of take a Phillips. So let's see if I can pry this up without tearing my roof. And looks like it's happening. So they did use some sort of sealant, but it doesn't seem like the perimeter was breached by water at all. So that means that I have some sort of issue with this connector leaking right in here somehow. All right, so this is what it looks like underneath. So these smaller wires here, I believe these are 10 gauge. These are the ones going down and connecting to the solar charge controller. These larger ones here, I don't know if these are, this looks like it might be 6. That's part of this connector here. So I don't think the problem is here. It's somehow there is water getting in here, but the hole here is so small I can't get the damn thing out. So I don't know how I don't know if they terminated it in the roof or what. This sucks. I don't know if I should try to cut it and then pull it through one at a time. I can see one of the terminals there. There we go. All right. Something was getting wet and I don't know where. So I'll have to look at the photos I took the night the alarm was going off and I discovered the moisture in the wires to determine which of the two terminals had the moisture. I can't see any evidence of any moisture. For example, it seemed like both of these terminals were pointed downward like this. So water would have had to collect inside here and then weep up and down the wire, which I guess is possible. I don't know. So at any rate, those are going to get replaced. I'll just go ahead and cut here and here. By the way, the other end of this has been disconnected for like a couple weeks. I guess what I can do is see if water could have gotten inside here somehow. So I'm just trying to get as much of this up as possible without making a bigger mess. And essentially what I'm after is just to kind of level it out. So that way I can lay down my new seam of Eternabond that's melting in the sun. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm replacing this sealant, whatever this may be, with an adhesive, because I don't want to depend on the fasteners alone. And it's coming up pretty easy, fortunate for me. Okay, so I think the water was penetrating at this junction box here, and specifically at the MC4 connectors. And the reason why I state that is for a couple of reasons, actually. First of all, on the surface here, you can see water did penetrate here at the junction box. I'm calling it a junction box, I'm not sure. There's a name for these solar connectors. But at any rate, you can see the discoloration here. And right at that spot right there was an issue with the Dicor, and you can see where water, you can see the discoloration in the dirt. But the other areas are totally clean. I don't see any evidence of water getting inside. And so what evidence I did find, other than, you know, there was water at the termination point inside the RV, at the solar control panel, inside the cable. I disconnect everything, I'm holding the wire, I have tape around the end of the wire, I pull the tape off, there's water. Inside this wire, somehow water got inside this cable on one of the terminals. So there was that evidence, and then the MC4 connectors themselves, after I took them apart and I looked at them and I studied them, I have them adjusted in a fashion that was not how they were adjusted when they were on the roof. So for instance, there's a definite gap here that you can see, and I've tightened the gap here and here. So in essence, this little area here, there's two parts, and so I tightened this section in here and closed the gap right here. There's a little gap right there. So I closed that gap by tightening down that and finger tight, but I closed the gap. There was a gap earlier. Now there's a gap here, not here. Additionally here, there was a gap here. And so I believe this nut here seals as you twist this, it seals here. So it's important to close the gap here. And what I did was not using too much torque, but I used an adjustable wrench and a 13/16. So I took it totally out. I was able to get a 13/16 around here. I'm pretty sure this is metric, but I have a standard wrench that size. And then just use this here to just to close that gap and seal it up. So back here, this is a lock nut which goes on to the back of this little contraption here. So essentially the lock nut slides right in here. So I have my new wire here. It's 10 gauge. Fortunately, I had some marine grade tinned copper wire. I went ahead and used my non-insulated butt-in connectors. So I have them here. They're shrink wrapped. I crimped them using my hydraulic crimper, and then marine shrink wrap. Marine meaning there's glue inside there. So I heated it up. So that's all sealed up and ready to go. Now I just have to chase the wire down the hole. I just need to unfurl these spools here, and then I'll once I get them inside, I'll cut them to length. So I'll go ahead, and I got my lock nut. There's a definite direction this goes, so I'll put the tapered end towards the outside. Find the tapered end of the lock nut, place it in there. Let's go on the positive side. I'm not sure why I'm choosing this side to be positive. It's just how it was. It seems to be reverse of how the solar panel is. Okay, now I got, just run it through. Okay. So the fun part here is that there's little brackets to hold the lock nut in place, so you kind of have to seat the lock nut and actually, I'm calling it a lock nut. I think these are called jam nuts. I don't even know if those are MC4 connectors, but that's the way I remember it. There, okay, got the one seated. Now I'm just going to twist this into place, which means I got a lot of cable to rotate around. Okay, I got the one on, so basically I'm just twisting the cable around. Once I start the thread, I'm just twisting the cable around and rotating this, and then cinched it up just a little bit with the wrench up against the jam nut, not a huge amount. So now I just kind of get my cables nice and straight, or kind of straight. Let's just get these staggered out a little bit here. Just kind of loosely. And then this is going to go in here. I might be able to feed the whole thing in there. It's a huge cavity behind the control panel. So that should jam right in there, no problem. Of course, now it's jamming in. All right, let's see. There. That's like a non-issue. So I'm going to measure out a couple strips here. Let's do one like so. Here. And they had one kind of coming in here, so that's kind of, I guess, a good idea. Just kind of put one like so. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll just attach one like so. There. I'll have another one going here. No idea what I'm doing, seriously. But I'll give it a try. Just got one more. Go across here. Now let's see if I can guide this in with my stripped screw, my stripped deck screw here. Find that cornerstone. Let's see here. I don't think that's going anywhere. Now these screws, I'm not moving them too much because they're not really biting into anything. They're just kind of there for lateral support. So I'm really depending upon that Eternabond, and I think that's what that is, Eternabond. Okay, next up is my trusty Dicor lap sealant. This is non-leveling. This is the non-sag formula. So this was what was recommended to me. So Andy over at Nut House Industries, he said, no, use this one. Use the self-leveling on flat surfaces, but here there's this ridge here. I got to get up and over that. I was looking into this to see what size bead to run, and so no wonder this stuff is always wet. It's always laid on like 3 inches thick. Well, I'm exaggerating, you know, but at any rate, the bead size is only up to 3/8. So 1/4 inch to 3/8 is its performance. So I'm going to cut this at 3/8. I'm curious to what that 3/8 looks like. Let's see here if I can remember how to do this. Essentially, I'm going to come around the difficult side. And what I want to do is I'm going to lay it on like running the ball. Yeah, it's coming out pretty thick. Yeah, this is the stuff. So I'm just going to move 1/4 inch and give it a pump. Uh-oh, it's rotating. Yeah, I'll tell you what, for non-sag, this stuff is pretty creamy. Okay, I'm going to call that an end point and then start back over here. Yeah, this is, I think I did a full inch. I don't know about no 3/8. Let me give a dab over the screw hole or the screw heads. I'm going to give a dab here because I want it to be on top of the little housing. All right, I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to let that sit for a little bit before I try connecting these MC4 connectors. Still got to terminate it downstairs, but while I'm up here, I want to see if I can wash some of these areas that I think I'm going to, and lay some more Dicor on some of these other openings I have up here. Here I'm at my Max Air fan, and around on the corner, I can see there's like a little dimple here, and it seems like there's a little void. So I want to kind of take care of that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a little soap, not a lot, just a little dab of soap, and then get some water. Because what I'm going to do is I want to moisten this towel up a little bit, and then essentially I'm just going to wash along the side here and try to remove some of this soil. So what I'm trying to do is wash the edges and free from dirt. I'm going to come back with some denatured alcohol and then clean this up. So I'm just trying to get rid of the dust so that when I lay some of that caulking on here, it's not that big a deal. And so now I come in with another dry towel, and not towel but t-shirt here, and just kind of dry that up a little bit. I don't think this is necessarily terrible and in dire need of repair, but I'm up here, I have the Dicor open, so I might as well knock it out. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm just going to kind of be careful, but there's this little void here, and I want to just kind of open that up. You can see just the water that I put on there kind of created an issue, and I can see now that I've peeled this back a little bit, I can see where it was getting, it could actually penetrate in there. So hopefully there's another barrier where they mounted the plastic vent to the roof. So I just want to make sure that this is dry. So I have a separate rag here that I'm going to use for the denatured alcohol. So the way I'm not an expert on this, but the way I understand it is I have a rubber roof, so I'm using this denatured alcohol in hopes that it doesn't have any oil. It's not oil based, so it won't react with the rubber in the roof. So just a little dab. I'm going to close this up so I don't pour it all over the place, and just kind of clean around the area too, because essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of that sealant right on top of there, and I don't want any moisture in there. I'm using the denatured alcohol to clean around the area so that when I apply the Dicor can stick to the existing manufacturer's application of Dicor. So now that I have that clean and I'm trying to dry it out as much, I'll move on to the next areas. I have one over at the Wi-Fi Ranger that I want to take care of, another one on this side of the Max Air vent, and up in the front cap there's a couple spots, and also at the rear just little spots, nothing major. So my understanding is that you don't actually want to carve out and remove the existing Dicor, but I did so in the case here where there was just like a huge air bubble. I opted to go ahead and remove that so I could get into that cavity there. I want to be able to come back and get inside the cavity and then seal around that area. So that's why I was removing the material. There was one other area where I wanted to remove material, and that was over by the Wi-Fi Ranger. But on the front cap and on the rear seal area, I'm just going to lay over the top there. You know, digging into there can create issues, I guess is what I'm trying to say there. But I just didn't see a reason to leave that material there, and I want to get into that void. So I'll go ahead and I'll just run some caulking in there, some lap sealant. So I'll try to find that void and then come up, and essentially that's it. And then I want a nice dollop without a huge dangly thing, so I'll leave that like that, and it'll settle, and it should start, when it settles, it starts looking like, here's the other one that we were doing, and you can see how it settles. So even though this is the stuff that doesn't self-level it still flows pretty good. I went and I did my rounds throughout. There wasn't a lot to do, but like I said, I'm up here, might as well get it knocked out. And so I did the soap and water, I rinsed it, I let it dry, did that going around now, and then I went around with the denatured alcohol, did my rounds around with that. So now that the alcohol doesn't take long to dry, has had a chance to dry, I'm coming back with the Dicor, and that'll be it. And then I just need to go downstairs and connect the cables, the new cables that I ran going to the solar charge controller. So I got the roof cleaned up. I have to still go up there one more time to reconnect the solar panel. Right now the solar panel's disconnected, because you got to remember that's a generator of electricity. I don't want the wire to be hot here. So I have that disconnected, and now I'm going to start pulling this off. And now, having said that, the battery is still connected. That's separate from the solar panel. Charge controller removed. So the only thing I have connected to the charge controller right now is the battery, and that's because I disconnected the soaking wet wires, which were these here. And as I pull on this, I should see, hey, there we are, a lot more wire than I need. So here I have the charge controller resting here. So I just want enough slack to go ahead and connect. Maybe I'll have like maybe this much here, get them kind of even. Now I'll go ahead and strip back the insulation. So this is what we got now, and it's just a matter of plugging that into the correct terminals here. So it's marked solar panel or battery, and so since I'm working with the solar panel, I'll connect to the solar panel. And I trimmed just enough insulation so it's not exposed. Okay, those, all right. And so I think I did it. I don't know, it looks pretty good to me. I gotta be careful with these screws, and I think these are the same screws they had upstairs, so they are like combination square Phillips up on the roof. All right, here we go. Yeah, nice and snug, not. Okay, so battery showing 100%. Somehow it has 807 amp hours. I don't know, whatever. So anyway, 13.7 volts on the battery. So the battery's connected, looking healthy. Now I'm just going to go ahead and run upstairs, make the connection, and then I'll see if I'm getting any solar on this. So I went upstairs, went on the roof, connected the solar panel with the MC4 connectors, and now that I'm looking here, now I see 14.3 volts. So that's an indicator that the solar panels are giving juice. 14.4 volts and 2.9 amps. 14.3, 14.4 volts, 3 amps. So it's working. All right. I mean, it's not rocket science. I just had to get the cable connected. I could have connected the other cable, but like I said, the whole reason was there was water in it and it was sounding an alarm. So I had to get rid of the old cable, put the new cable in. Not super complicated, but there were some steps involved, and certainly the Dicor was fun. So at any rate, hey, thanks for coming along for the ride, and I'll have some more videos coming, I'm sure. There's always things to do, right? Always trying to accomplish our goals, and you know, these little obstacles get in the way, and I'm so happy that I didn't have to run to the store this time. So there were preparations that I made on making decisions on, you know, having spare cable, having spare terminators, you know, the proper tools, these sorts of things. None of that was an accident. I lucked out that I had everything that I needed to a certain degree, but the point is that I made choices to carry certain types of tools and carry certain types of supplies. So at any rate, it all worked out. I'm so happy to have it complete. Hopefully, knock on wood, I don't have any other issues. Thanks for watching, everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.